So this is the Chad C P Hobkirk book. This is what the original looks like. From 1800s. Huddersfield, its history and natural history. A descriptive, historical, geological, botanical and zoological sketch of a town and neighbourhood. Chad C P Hobkirk, 1859. Illustrated with engravings on wood. Warden Lock, Fleet Street. This copy that someone's provided for me from one of the Facebook groups. Author's copy, May the 1st, 1859. This is funny. Corrigenda. Makes me think of Coronation Street. I've actually got the meaning. I had the meaning of corrigenda up somewhere actually. It means to correct, basically, or put something right. Author's copy. This was £35. The second edition now on eBay is £35, but I think the original's first edition is going for £85. But if this is the author's actual copy, his own, signed, then it might be probably worth a few £100. I can't read all of that. I can read some of it. Now this is just a little bit about in the 33rd Henry VIII, there was a suit between William Ramsden, plaintiff, and Thomas Hay and John Armitage, not spelled Armitage, it's spelled with a H. And the matter in dispute being a claim of a suit and sought to the King's watermill, corn mill and filling mill in Woodfield Mills, Conewater, Almondsbury, spelt Almondsbury. We've done a whole video on arms and giving alms and the meanings of arms. How long it continued in the Burton family is not known, but by indenture bearing date 12th of June 1573, John Byrom, Esquire, sold the manor of Huddersfield to Sir Gilbert Gerard. When the present family became seized of the manor, we are not informed, but it's certain that John Ramsden, Esquire of Byrom Hill, had a grant of a market at Huddersfield by patent, dated the 1st of November 1670. Something. As I said, it's like in Doctor Who, isn't it, on the series 13 when they got that angel village and there's that old guy and the old woman pick up the phone box to ring the police, and then she stood there and she's going 17, trying to get the date right. 23rd Charles II, but we must return to dates. During the Wars of the Roses, the whole of the district in this neighbourhood again became the scene of bloodshed and rape, but although we find records of battles fought at Wakefield, Pontefract, Leeds and other places, little or no mention is made of the district to which we are more particularly concerned. Again, in the time of Charles and Cromwell, was the scourge of war visited upon Yorkshire. The principal manufacturing towns of the district sided with the parliamentarians. Bradford seems to have been most. So this is to do with Cromwell because one of Ramsden's ancestors, the Ramsden who was involved in the Victoria Jubilee Tower getting built, one of his ancestors obviously was helping Huddersfield sided with the parliamentarians, so they wouldn't have been happy about that because they were in opposition to the royals. So I think that's got something to do with not only that, but what the area is and represents as well, being the area of Liberty Caps and the Liberal Party, of which it was then, not the Labour Party. I think the site is. I've got a good idea of what went on with basically with the Druids and then with. I think it's been sort of kind of vandalised to do with religious reasons. But anyway, we'll go on to the... I'll tell you what it says anyway. But we know that there was some bad blood between the royalists and the parliamentarians, obviously, and that was to do with the tower getting built, and Mountbatten, because it's obviously mountain with a batten, and the other tower that they built at the Heights of Abraham was actually a batten shape, in fact. Actually, funny, on some coat of arms, like on the top of the castle bits, looks like battens as well. Where are we now? What's this? Alright. A habit, whether good or bad, is more easily got than got rid of. At least so runs the old proverb. How far this may hold good in our case we do not know, but having by some means contracted the habit of devoting Saturday afternoons to a country stroll, we should feel great reluctance to give it up. It is a portion of the week to which we look forward with unalloyed pleasure, when we can throw aside the heavy garb of care. Well, that's the Tories altogether, isn't it, throwing aside the heavy garb of care, because they don't care about anything for themselves, and flying away from the busy hum of the crowded town, hold communion with the spirit of nature in her own domain. Such excursions are like bright oases in the desert, little spaces of time during which we can cast away from us all the dreary intercourse of daily life, and be free as the air we breathe. Availing ourselves then of another fine afternoon, we prepare to visit that interesting spot, Kirklees, by way of Kirkeaton. Our road is along Mould Green as far as the bottom of Almondry Bank. Then, turning to the left, we follow the Wakefield Road to the Red House. Well, the Red House Junction, I've never heard of any junction called Red House Junction, but they've got Red Brick Mill in Batley, haven't they? The Red House. Red House. Could be significant. Definitely diverted attention away from here to do with the Red House and put it over towards Batley anyway. Where we take to the fields. As we go along, you will notice a very peculiar looking wood. Rising out of an extensive plain is a round hill of considerable height. Well, it's not round, is it? It's Liberty Cap shaped, and nearly a quarter of a mile in diameter, the sides of which are extremely steep and covered with a dense wood up to the very summit. The top is quite bare of wood and under cultivation. From its peculiar form, the wood would get the name the Rammed Wood, although some would call it Warrior's Tomb. Well, didn't you just say it was a round shape? It's not peculiar at all, didn't you? Why not just say that it's the shape of a Liberty Caps? And a helmet, actually a helmet shape. Warrior's Tomb, there it is. The locals called it Warrior's Tomb when he was making inquiries. I have not heard it called that, but you can't see it anymore, can you? It's kind of fallen out of memory because you can't have got the visual access to it. Various have been the surmises respecting its origin. Well, if you get on a map now with Google Maps and check out Old Oswestry Fort and the alignment, it's perfectly aligned, and it's kind of just like a little bit of a smaller version that it doesn't appear to have any embankments, but it could have been easily dug out. If it did have embankments around it, they aren't had to dig out. I think something went on with the Romans coming over, because they were specifically, explicitly on a mission to wipe out and eradicate the Druids and any remaining evidence of them, to be honest. And I think that they might have dug it out to lessen the significance of it, and then they didn't mention it in the reports, because then they tried to make out that it was the angles to the Druid stronghold when it wasn't at all. I think that was a Druid stronghold. What other Druid stronghold would you have other than a hill fort the shape of a Liberty Cap, except the fact that it's not Maiden Castle, but it's all about more style than size, I think. And it has definitely got the style. Various have been the surmises respecting to its origin. In form, it must nearly resemble a tumulus, but then its immense size is against such an opinion. Unless we suppose it to have been the burial place of the warriors slain in some great battle. This is not, after all, very unlikely, as there have been records showing that the most fierce and bloody war was waged in this neighbourhood. Its prince, Edwin, in repelling incursions of Cedar in Britain and Penda the Mercian. Again, it may have some connection with, although it scarcely could have been the site of a small Roman town, mentioned by Dr. Richardson as near Kirkheaton. Yet, we must confess there seems to be little to favour such an opinion. Then again, how it came to be planted with trees on both sides, only whilst the top is perfectly bare of them, is quite an anomaly. Well, you could cut them down and measure how many rings they've got in them, unless they just keep growing and dying and growing and dying. And there is a mystery about its origin and purpose, which we should only be glad to see cleared away. But now, while you're here, just indulge in a little digression from a straightforward road and take a stroll along the banks of this small rivulet as far as the bridge. Well, he's mentioned bridge. We feel you'll be pleased with it there. Well, I think that the long barrows were actually called bridge houses, because like the Brigantes, Bridget, Beam, Mass, Pearl, they're kind of like a walkway. I've got a new opinion now. Anyway, I'm going to put it in the next video. If you think of all the different cairns, barrows, long barrows, and so forth, you actually got two sorts. You've got the round ones and the long barrows. So it's clearly like male and female. And if you look at Hetley, Pegler's Tuft, Uli Longbarrow, and Stroud, it's very female, like crawling out of out of the woman. And the ironic thing is, they've named the Isle of Man the Isle of Man, a man. But that Devil's Elbow, the one near the Devil's Elbow, he's actually on the Standing with Stones video with the pastry guys. That actually is very female in shape, and it's more gesturing of a female than a man. And what I actually think is that if you sort of say, okay, some of these might be more male and female, obviously. Well, if you had a headquarters for either, it would fit the model to have, if you want the headquarters of all the long barrows or the male ones, it could be here, because we've got two massive long barrows near a hill fort, which I think is a hill fort, big enough to be a hill fort anyway. Even if it's a mound, it's a hill fort and a mound. If you have like Long Barrow Hill Fort, then you could have like a burial mound hill fort as well. Now the thing is, with ours, they're both Long Barrow shape, which is a male shape. Now, if you go to Newgrange and Noth in Ireland, you've definitely got something going on there, some sort of headquarters, around Noth and Newgrange, but they're rounded shaped, aren't they? So if you think, but the thing with Ireland, the island of Ireland is more or less of it's more well-rounded, all around. It's a little bit elongated, but it is more evenly shaped, whereas Britain is long. So if you've got an island like England and Scotland, which is one island, and you got the long barrows, we're pretty much in the middle here. And then you've got the massive Long Barrow headquarters, not just one of them, a couple of them. But then you've got, at Noth and Newgrange, you've got at least two considerable size sites, but they're more round, which symbolises the female shape, like the Isle of Man, one that you crawl out of, and Long Barrow. Now, the thing is, if that was the centre of the symbolism for more of the female form, then it's fitting, because it's the largest centre. You go into a river to get there, but you also go into a river on the Humber to get to our site. But the thing is this: with the male form, with the woman, the female form, you're going inside into the womb, right, into the womb. But with the male form, you don't go inside the male, do you? So it would be fitting that if you had two massive kind of like elongated Long Barrow hill forts that were more male sort of gesturing, then you go on you go on top of them. You don't go inside it, do you? Whereas in the female ones, like, you go inside them. There's something in that. It's the fact that it's not just Castle Hill. There's Castle Hill and there's Dunelm, and then you've got the Warrior Tomb one, and they're all big and they're all hill fort size. There's no doubt about it. And then next to the Pennines, which is where you get sacrament. Now the thing is that there were cairns and long barrows all around both islands, both in there and here. But you could say that if one was specialising in more male or female, it still had a headquarters, and maybe the headquarters for the male one was over here, and then it was symbolised by bridges. Even though the word bridge is meant to be the female god, but it's a bridge and elongation seems more male to me. They might have given us misinformation on that. They might not have written the truth down, and that would solve everything. I think that's quite obvious. And the only fact is that most of the archaeologists now, who are either siding with the royalists camp, not siding with the liberals camp, is that they don't really want us to know that knowledge, understand it. They don't want us to interpret and understand any of the sites as temples that were in use. It's got a lot to do with the creation of baptism, the history of baptism. I think that all of the Celts and the villages and the people were baptised into the religious order and learned about it to understand about spirituality to a certain level. And then there were other ceremonies obviously reserved for the Druids, which is kind of getting into the equivalent we've got nowadays is to get ordained and all that. And then even, the rulers, getting, crowned and everything like that. But I think the talks were more a symbol of passing the knowledge, because it wore it around the neck, and you've got the two round bits. So when you look through them, it seems fitting to when you move them. It's like when you follow the movements of the sun or the moon. Like if there's recumbent stone circles, it all seems fitting, and there's a lot in common with the stones at Stonehenge. And they've got a recumbent outside Newgrange, the recumbents up in Aberdeen, and then the recumbents at Stonehenge are actually lifted up and go all around the top, and they're locked in with a liberty cap-shaped things which are situated at the north, the top. I think they definitely had a sense of that. Talked about in the other video, simply because when you're drawing on a wall, you've only got 2 dimensions, and your third dimension will be going into the wall, and you can't go through it. So they knew that you had to change your representation of one dimension. So, I think, and I think that a lot of these sites are to do with orienteering and enhancing the energies, the magnetic poles and certain resistances to energies and things like that. It's quite apparent, and there are actually studies now that it exists anyway. But it's all in scientific language and scientific. It's all in different types of modern subjects and fields of study, mainly that they use equipment and devices to engage in it. They don't tend to have it in a natural capacity where you would go out into nature and kind of just, lay there and try and get findings or results. I don't think it's more to do with machines now, technology, but, the whole issue over it, and why there are issues over it, is to do with heritage. It's to do with, different cultures, the Romans. It's to do with conquests and things like that, and different powers taking over, and then not wanting certain religions and things to exist anymore. Mainly Christians as well. But then again, now the church is meant to say it accepts all other religions. So if it's accepting all other religions, then surely it must be discriminative if it's having a religion where the sacrament's illegal, like psilocybin, So I don't know how the Archbishop of Canterbury works out that he's not being, he's not being discriminative against a religion. Just like gypsies, Priti Patel and Boris Johnson, they're saying, "Oh no, you can't be discriminative against Chinese culture. You can't be discriminative against." Women, you can't be discriminating. But then they're saying, "Oh, well, gypsies have got a culture and they like to live on land and they've got a religion and things like that. And, you can't have that religion anymore." we're going to discriminate against your religion that is that you travel around the country and park on free land that's free. You know, they're so discriminative, are the Conservatives, and they don't like to reflect in the mirror and look at themselves, their own behaviour. That's a problem. But I didn't really want to have to go into all that now. I just wanted to read you this book out, but it's about them not telling the truth about these sites. There's a lot of people who do know about these sites, but they don't want us to know the truth. And this is when you get into like Dennis McKenna and Terence McKenna and Jonathan Ott and stuff like that.